actually in the screen?
Yep, you're right in the bullseye middle. And it's recording. I don't like it.
Why?
Because you're not smiling.
Well, I'm not ready to shoot yet. Welcome back, FG fans. We are back again for part 5 of the wiring and harness video series. And this should wrap it up. Let me just go ahead and run through a few things that I thought of after finishing part 4 that may be helpful to everyone, just you know, kind of as a recap. All right, so I have some new parts here. Let me move those around so you can see them. Put them up in the view here. And so this is a new fuse block. And I have an inline fuse holder over here. So yeah, let me run through this for you piece by piece then. Okay, so starting at the battery. Now obviously you can see that this terminal is much larger than you would use obviously for this particular wire. You can see that this wire, you could probably fit 2 of these inside of here. If you were wiring something that required a lot more current, as we had talked about in segment 4, you'd be using something like this with a commensurate wire size, which would probably be about a number 4, maybe a number 2. I will again post the wire size selection chart so that you'll have that handy if you didn't catch that in a number 4. Anyhow, back to my point here. So for the battery terminal, you're going to have something with a larger diameter, obviously, to fit on the bolt there. So you would want to have an inline fuse. This is one type that you can use. This already has the wires connected to it. I do not have one of the screw down type handy right here, but I will grab a photo from some internet site and go ahead and put that into the video here so you can see what those look like if you've never run across those before for the higher ampere units, as we had talked about before, 80s, 100s, 120, something like that. So anyway, what you'd be doing here, you're going to have your inline fuse here, right? Inline fuse holder. And, well, obviously this would be, of course, attached by crimping, etc. I'm going to just take that off, right? So here you have a waterproofing cover. So after the fuse is installed, you just snap this on. Now, something very important. This needs to be located, or whichever one you choose, as the primary fuse protection system. You want this as close to the battery as possible. I did fail to mention that in the earlier video, and I kind of figured that out after I was reviewing and final editing, and I said, yeah, let me go back and hit that, because that is very important. Again, you want your primary source protection as close to the battery as possible, so that only this little piece from here to here would be at risk if you did have any kind of a short circuit or an overload, that this fuse is going to be downstream as close as possible to provide the most protection to the entire harness, which would be coming along behind it. Like say you were connecting here to the battery and you're going to locate your fuse block, say inside the cab somewhere. I actually have 2 of these, this exact model as a matter of fact, inside the truck over on the kick panel, on the left side, way up high, over near where the dead pedal is, where your left foot goes when you're driving. All right, so this particular model is interesting. Let me see if I can give you a closer view here. Okay, yeah, that came out pretty good. All right, so this model here, this also has a ground bus. So you have to be very careful when you're connecting this to look at what you're doing. So one of these posts you'd be putting on here, and then you'd have this, as I'd mentioned, connected back to the battery, right? So wherever this ends up getting mounted. So, you know, this could be literally maybe only this long, or you might have 20 feet of wire in between. As I'd mentioned, always this is going to be closest to the battery, and then everything else downstream that way is already protected. So this is like your sub-fuse block here after the primary. So if you think of this like house wiring, your 240 volt mains coming into your standard American house has a primary circuit breaker, which is usually a 200 ampere if you have more modern service. And actually, if you have a big house, you may have 300 amp service. That depends on what your local utility is providing. Anyway, after that, you have all of your circuit breakers. You have them all lined up, click, 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 right? So this is very, very similar to that, except only at a 12 volt level. So that's your primary power interrupter, and then you have all of these, and you're going to size these for your branches. So after you've got that set, as I was mentioning, one of these is a ground and one of these is your hot side. So you want to be very sure that you get those set up correctly, and then you start sizing and plugging in your fuses. You'll put your loads into here. Now let me give you one little piece of advice. Let me get this open up here. I would probably use these. Let me give you a look at that. Yeah, see, instead of being a ring, this looks more like a pitchfork. All right, so these are a lot easier. These are called spade terminals. These are a lot easier to connect. So you can see all you have to do is loosen the screw. You can slide it underneath and tighten it down. These are much easier to connect if this fuse block is located upside down like this, and you're in here like this with your head trying to get to it, which is exactly where they are located in my truck, as I'd mentioned, way up high underneath the dash. They're only probably 3 or 4 inches from the rear of the instrument panel, or speedometer, et cetera, right? So it's really high up there. It's not going to get kicked accidentally. It's a really good place for it, but it is very hard to access to add new circuits. So if you're putting this somewhere where it's really easy to get to, it's just like this, just sitting here flat, you've got it mounted on a panel, you can get to the screws really easy, yeah, then I would use the ring terminals, because you know that these are not going to pull off, right? Well, obviously this one's too big, but you get the idea. The ring goes on there, and there's no way for it to pop loose. Whereas theoretically here, if you didn't have the screw tightened down far enough, you can see theoretically that it could pop loose. So that's the only downside to those. Really, both of these are fine. So anyway, to run through the recap, battery feeds your primary, comes back over to here, feeds this. This is your secondary bus, and this is going to go off to each one of your branch circuits, whatever that happens to be. I have my Yasu ham radio is one of the loads that's connected to this. I have some LED lighting that comes off of another one. And if you go back to lessons 3 and 4 where we talked about fusing, you should already be pretty much clued in on how to do that. You're going to want to select, again, as I had said before in the previous lesson, that it's very important to make sure that your fuse sizes are correct, matched to what you're doing. Like your radio here may be a 20 or 25 amp. You may be feeding this with, say, a 40, which is what mine is. Mine has a main circuit breaker of 40 amperes and then feeds this, and I have a 20 going off to the radio because that was sufficient for what it was rated for. But then let's say that your second one here maybe is some interior lighting, which mostly you're probably going to use LEDs these days, which draw practically no current at all. So that branch, you wouldn't want to put a 20 amp fuse in it. And so you might be thinking, okay, well, why would I not want to just put a bunch of big fuses? Make the fuse as small as possible, but still protect the circuit correctly. So what I mean by that is if you figure out that this branch is only pulling, say, 1.5 amperes, which for LEDs is probably actually even going to be high. 1 ampere may be quite sufficient. Just put a 1 amp fuse in there. That way, if this does happen to short out, it's going to cause very little damage before the fuse lets go, and then everything's safe because the power's turned off. You don't want to put a fuse that's so much larger if it really isn't necessary. So 20s, 15s, 10s, yeah, where you need them. 5s, 2.5s, 1s, where they're sufficient. Keep everything safe. These are actually pretty cheap, honestly. This one, if I recall correctly, I got this from Amazon, and I think it was like $9. It does not come with any fuses. It just comes with this unit. It does have a protective plastic cover here, which goes, and then you have these little guys that just tighten down. And what they did, which is really nice and very helpful after time when you may forget exactly what you've done is that what they've done here, which is very nice, is there's these little clear windows right here with spaces for stickers to be able to apply right here. These stickers are actually provided in the box, and they have common tagging. You know, they might say radio, front lights, roof lights, CB, ham radio, things like that. All the common types of things, air compressor, whatever you might have connected. If it's something a little more esoteric, they probably won't have a tag for you, but it's really nice that they just provided all of that for all of the general basic types of things. So I just went ahead and popped those little stickers on mine that are underneath the dashboard, so just to kind of prompt me. As I said, you know, it's been in there I think probably about a year now. After a while things get a little fuzzy. It's like, yeah, where did I wire that to? And that immediately just clicks right back into your head. You know exactly what you did. So little tip there as well. So not to belabor the point, that's basically it. That's how to build a main harness and a sub harness, and just get out there and try it out. You know, like I said, people seem to be very frightened that may know a lot about mechanical and may be very frightened on electrical, and it's really not that weird. It's not black magic, it's not wizardry. It's just find good information and follow it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You're not turning yourself into Tesla or Edison. You're not figuring out things that nobody knew. There's a lot of documentation, as I'd mentioned. There's other people certainly out on YouTube as well. A lot of great books. If you want to get further and further into it and really get involved into learning about electronic modules, how all the controls in the truck itself operate that are installed by the factory. You know, how does an engine control module work? How does a transmission control module work? What is the BCM, the body control module? What is that doing? How does it know when to turn the dome lights on and off? All of those things can get very involved, but don't be afraid of it. Get out there and try it. It's things that are going to save you a lot of money. Even though it may not be something that you can fix yourself, it's going to give you a lot of knowledge that if you take it to another shop and they have a look at it, they'd be like, okay, yeah, I think this guy's trying to scam me, or yeah, that actually sounds reasonable. It can be helpful regardless, and you never know who else you may be able to assist too. Some friends, you know, they might get into a wiring project. You might start helping and you jump in and say, hey, yeah, you know, I know how to do this. I can assist with that. Great. Or you might even run into somebody on the side of the road. You never know. Try to be a good Samaritan. Pay it forward. You know, you might run into somebody with trouble and it's like, you know, I know exactly what's going on here. I think I can fix that for you. If it's something fairly simple and you have some hand tools along, you may be able to help them out. So, you know, there seems to be a complete shortage of people that really worry about anybody these days. And compassion for the fellow man seems to have fallen a lot by the wayside. So be the nice guy that jumps in and helps out. I hope this entire series has been helpful. All 5 of the videos. I know sometimes I do tend to run a little long, and you might be like, okay, is he done yet? Yes, I actually am. So Frontier Geek signing off until the next time, which hopefully may be another outdoor trip, hopefully soon. Between schedule and the remnants of the lockdown. Now, I'm not telling anybody anything new. You know how it is out there. So, anyway, till next time, Frontier Geek out.